G'day everyone. You know, many years ago when I was new to watch collecting, the Casio GShock flew in on my radar, but at the same time I was too busy looking at other pieces to consider getting one. Thankfully, one Christmas morning many years ago, I had one gifted to me, and it was waiting patiently in my watch box to be found and worn, much to my surprise. So let's get our bling on and review the Casio GShock GA110GB-1A, which I'll just refer to as the GShock. So here's a specs list of all the details, including physical dimensions, weight, water resistance, crystal, movement, and price. And if you like my video content and haven't had a chance till now, a like and subscribe always helps. And I feel that we need to address the elephant in the room and start with the GShock's biggest and most obvious negative, and that's the dial legibility. Now I understand that Casio were going ham with the whole black and gold theme here, but when you have golden hands with black tips circling a dial comprising of gold features and a negative digital display with almost no contrast between them, well, those hands almost disappear on the dial, to a point where you can only read them at certain times of the day or if you concentrate on the dial, which for most watches you really shouldn't have to do to tell the time. Negative screen displays normally don't provide the best viewing experience, and while this GShock needs to use this as part of its color theme, the trouble is that they're rather small. This not only affects the font size of digital text, but also its readability in a lot of lighting conditions. And that also affects how you'll access its standard array of menus and features. And yes, like all other GShocks, it comes with a backlight to assist with readability in darker environments, but the orange light only appears at the bottom of the dial to illuminate the time panel, and even then the light strength is wimpy at best, to a point where it's almost useless. But I will come back to legibility again, because now I move into my mixed feelings, and kicking off this segment is the resin strap. Its highlights include the fact that it keeps to the case theme thanks to its jet black colour and gold toned double buckle and keeper for a more sure fit. And the inclusion of numerous adjustment notches in the strap means it'll fit a variety of wrist sizes. The best part, and what I'll disclose now, is that my example here is almost 7 years old, and the strap is still not only in great condition, but could pass for almost new with a clean. So rest assured that this thing is built to last, for at least 7 years anyway. But it's not all gravy. The strap isn't held in by your average spring bars and instead uses these side screws to replace it, so if you wanted to throw something different on, your choices will be extremely limited. The resin material is certainly durable and ideal for rough or sweaty activities, but isn't the most comfortable to wear for long stints. But the biggest grumble is how the strap ends near the lugs stick out awkwardly, which pushes out that lug-to-lug measurement. Even on my 7.5-inch wrist, this thing looks a bit too bulky. It's a bit tricky as well to get an accurate lug width measurement, but from its thickest point it's around 29mm and tapers down to a little over 22mm. So from that perspective it does help with the comfort factor, but chunky it definitely is. And seeing as we're mentioning size, yeah, this will definitely wear way too big for those with smaller wrists. And if that's you, but you still like the look, you could opt for its baby G sibling, more manageable, and has a bonus of white tips on the hands for a bit of improved legibility. And repeating the legibility theme ad nauseum, and with almost zero surprise, this GShock comes with a mineral crystal. Now normally I would perceive this feature as more of a negative owing to its lack of scratch resistance, but if Casio had provided a sapphire with this watch, then they'd either have to put on tons of anti-reflective coating, or have the display go from hard to read to almost non-existent. Given that the mineral doesn't suffer from reflection as badly, in this instance I'm inclined to give it a slightly approving nod. Pricing is also where I have a bit of concern. At $179 you can certainly get GShocks that are much more expensive than that, but conversely you can also get them cheaper, especially when you consider that they'll have the added bonus of improved legibility, or in some cases retro appeal if that floats your boat. Just something to consider. And seeing as we're about to start talking about the GShock's pros and its style, one thing I will slide in beforehand is that minute tracking ring. Between the 11 to 7 indices it appears straightforward with a gold background and black markers, but this is broken by the presence of the speed or tachometer subdial, and in place of aligned markers are these smaller circles with a slightly broken symmetry. From a design perspective it does look rather interesting, but those looking to accurately line up their analog hands or prefer a uniform appearance will be a bit disappointed. But for now let's look at the positives. And while this GShock loses points as a practical time teller, it certainly makes up for it in presence and design. It's big, it's bold, it's gold, And of all the timepieces I've ever owned and worn, this one always gets the most positive comments from people. So if you're looking to draw attention to your wrist, this G-Shock will certainly do that. And as we move closer into the dial, you kind of get a bit of a steampunk theme going on here. The hour and minute hands are what I would describe as a hybrid of thick Dorphine and syringe styling, with little circles cut out in their middle, and helping to rotate them are these cogwheels in the center. As mentioned earlier, you have the tachymeter subdial at the 9 o'clock position, and I really appreciate how they've kept the gear theme going here, as you've got a pointer and this partial cog piece acting as its counterweight. Directly opposite at 3 o'clock is a thick gold-coloured insert, and embedded within it is a duller gold-coloured rectangle with the Casio logo and advertised water resistance in black block text. At the top and bottom of the dial you have the mini digital displays. The 12 o'clock screen shows the current day, and toggling the side buttons shows the features being selected, and the current time appears at the 6 o'clock window. Moving further out, you have these golden, almost obelisk shaped indices that are embedded into the chapter ring running around the dial. On first glance, you won't notice this detail, but when you get up close, it gives the G-Shock a more quality appearance. Just on the edges above that, there are timing and specification details written in a darker gold colour. Not very legible, but I prefer this compared to having them crowd the dial unnecessarily. There's a lot of other finer detail on this dial, and if I go into it all, this will turn into a half-hour review, so the only thing I'll mention regarding text at least is the use of a dark yellow G-Shock and protection running at the top and bottom of the bezel respectively, along with very faint words above each pusher describing their function. And seeing as we're mentioning them, I'll say that the push buttons work great. They're recessed into the case to prevent damage from knocks or accidental operation, and they have enough presence and ridges along them to make them simple to grip and push. And they have a very tactile and slightly resistant feel to them. Not spongy or loose, so they come in handy when you need to navigate and set the G-Shock's functions, which include world time, alarm, countdown timer, stopwatch, and backlight. Touching back on legibility, I know this G-Shock is far from the best for it, but when you get it in the sunlight, everything that's gold shines on this thing, and that includes the digital displays, making them almost crystal clear to read. So I guess if you're somebody who spends a lot of time in the sunny outdoors, reading the style won't be such a bad thing after all. And despite the behemoth dimensions of this G-Shock, thanks to its resin construction it feels very light on wrist. This makes its appearance and feel rather deceptive, as it certainly has a commanding presence but doesn't weigh you down for it. And finally, there's a reason why G-Shocks in general are such a popular watch. As I mentioned before, I've owned this one for almost 7 years, and it's been to work, to the pool, and to the beach thanks to its 200 meters of water resistance, and even served gardening duty. Hardly hardcore affairs, but given its age and the fact that it still looks in great condition and runs just fine, is a testament to its longevity and durability. And despite having mineral crystal, there's no scratches on this thing yet, and that's thanks as well to how the resin bezel sits just above it, meaning you have to be pretty deliberate or unlucky to hit it. And while I am still smitten with my Garmin, I do feel this G-Shock is a slightly tougher watch overall. Oh, and before I forget, the stainless steel case back is held down by 4 smaller screws, and adorning the middle is the G-Shock Resist logo, along with its advertised features below and model and other specification details running around the edges. On the plus side, you'll only need a small screwdriver to get inside the G-Shock when the time comes to do a battery change, and after all this time, the logo and details have stood up to wear and chafe quite nicely, although you can start to see a little bit of fading on the edges. But now that's all been done and said, would I recommend this G-Shock specifically? I think if you want something that's tough, draws attention, you don't mind huge watches, and black and gold is life, then you'll probably enjoy wearing this. But if legibility and telling the time is more important, even just a little bit, then steer clear of this one. It is pretty cool, but truthfully, I prefer not having to run outside or get my wrist on the right angle to find out if it's 5 PM yet. But just remember that there's a G-Shock for almost any casual occasion, so there's a massive choice out there. If you currently own or have previously owned this G-Shock model, I'd like to hear thoughts about it. But that's it for now, and thanks for watching, eh?